that area. So just
Not too much.
it's turned into over the years, and I've lived in Tahlequah 46 years of my life, of my 48 years. I've lived here, and Cherokee Nation has just changed so much over the years of, living here, and I've seen it. Obviously, I've worked in it, and I just it just breaks my heart to see the direction that the tribe is going.
So what do you think is changed about it?
It was a lot more about your employees and the people that we serve, and it's just turned into this corporation where now the focus is building these structures and less emphasis on the people that work there, especially in your healthcare. And I can only speak to the healthcare system because that's where I come from. And it's just like they don't care about the people that service the people. There are certain areas, that they spend less time and attention on that I think should be top priority. Your elders and your veterans, they have programs and stuff like that, but it just seems like they've always focused more on other things than those types of things. And so, I don't want to come in here and bash, but I think I want to just kind of share my experience, I guess, more than anything. It's like, because a lot of people are afraid of Cherokee Nation. A lot of people are afraid to speak out against them because of what the retaliation that they can do.
Well, I'm not.
Well, and I'm not either. I said this way back. And I always say Cherokee Nation came to me 8.5 years. Well, last August, 8.5 years ago, they came to me. I didn't seek them out. They sought me out, and they offered me an opportunity, and I took it. But I didn't need them before I started working for them, and I don't need them now. So that's kind of where my thought process is. So I'm not afraid of them.
Yeah.
And I feel like coming on here, I was like, it's a freedom of speech. I have that freedom of speech and a right to share my experience, and people can take it for what it's worth. But I think there's a lot of things that people say and put on social media and different areas that they're sharing information about the Cherokee Nation. Some people just either turn a blind eye or just too afraid to comment or say anything on it, or just don't want to deal with it or believe it. They don't believe it, whatever the case may be. But there's stuff out there, and people are just not paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
And when you don't pay attention, you feed the monster. And Cherokee Nation is a monster. It is a machine. It is it's a, dare I say, it's like the mafia.
You think so?
I think it kind of operates a little bit like that. You have your captains and your soldiers, and you trickle on down to different people who do certain things. I've just heard a lot of stories, and again, a lot of stories, but all I can speak to is my experience, really.
Yeah, I've heard that I don't know much about them other than I get free health care from them. That's it. And I never really thought about them being like their own government entity, and the control that they can develop and just have over the people here.
Yeah.
So do you think they're just getting too greedy, or what do you think is going on to do that?
Well, I think just in my experience, I feel like it's just a lot of power hungry, control, money. I mean, we got this. It's not secret. It's out. It's public that I think it was a $3.8 billion budget. I said billion, not million.
To do what?
For the budget, that they get
just the whole budget to divvy out how they want.
Yeah. So they got a budget, and people are thinking, wow, Cherokee Nation doing great things. But from my understanding of that, the reason we get that big amount is because we're poor. It looks nice and pretty on the outside, but really on the inside, people don't get that amount of money if they're doing well off.
Yeah.
If you're self-governing and you don't need funding from some other source, and you're doing well, why would they give you that amount of money? I don't know. I mean, I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but that's just kind of where my head is. It's like,
that's a lot. And their government reach is only local to this area, right? I mean,
well,
Oklahoma, or like, what do they actually govern?
Well, and they have what they they have at-large tribal members that were part of the voting last election. So you got at-large people, and those guys are in, like, I think in California and different states. That you've seen the chief. There's been videos and stuff of him going down and visiting these different at-large Cherokees. For some odd reason, I don't know, he's paid a lot more attention to them. I don't know why, if it's for voting. I kind of see the big picture, maybe some writing on the wall, is that this, they've talked about this 12, and I hear people mention all the time, there's this 12 years, and that means that it started with Baker, Bill John Baker, and it started, this regime of Bill John Baker era, and then when Hoskins got elected, they said he's just continuing the Bill John era, because Bill John was there, he was elected twice, and then you've got Hoskins. So they just, this 12 years of just the same stuff over and over that people have complained about, and their focus, they've lost their way and their focus of helping people in general. Like I said, it's just seems more like on building these big hospitals and building these inpatient hospitals and getting these casinos and things like that. And everybody says, well, how are you going to house these people, or how are you going to employ these things? Because you got these big buildings, but where are you going to get the people to operate it? You can't even operate the CNOC, which is their health clinic, the big health clinic. You can't even operate.
Is that the new one?
Yeah, the newer one.
Yeah.
And then they're building the hospital right next to it. You can't even employ that. That thing is not at full capacity. They still, they can't. How do you build a hospital and
not be able to employ or be able to be at max capacity for serving the people?
That's right.
That's strange. Like, do you think they're just burying money into it to, like, why would they do that?
I've stopped trying to think how they think because it just doesn't make sense to me. I just think it's really about just building an empire, really. I mean, you just start building these things, and it just seems weird what they build and why they build them and at what time, I'm not at that, that was never my pay grade, so I never understood all the ins and outs. It's just, how does that really impact the people?
There's not a lot of people in this town or professional. I guess they get traveling nurses and stuff here to run all that stuff.
Yeah, that's the thing, and that's what CNOC is, my experience there. And listen, I'll go back to the fact of where I live and breathe that leadership is key. Years ago when I started, we had, who was in leadership at the time that I started? I'm trying to remember. It's been 8.5 years ago, almost 9 years ago. But I know that Dr. Grimm came in as the interim executive director of the entire health system. So, and he was a dentist, and so you think a dentist running an entire health system, you're like, well, why would you pick a dentist to run an entire health system, right? Because they know about dentists and doing dental stuff. But Dr. Grimm was well-rounded. I admired him. He was highly decorated. He's got a lot of experience and a lot of connections, and he just kind of understood the health system. So he came in with a lot of good stuff. And then he ended up taking a position over at Chickasaw Nation. Now he's the secretary of their health over at Chickasaw Nation. So we lost him to Chickasaws.
I didn't know you could just hop tribes like that.
Yeah, you can. There's some at Cherokee Nation, it's Cherokee preference, and then you go down the line. So it's Cherokee, Native, and then you can even non-Native elect, but you have to go through a solid process before you can hire a non-Native.
So, getting all this money, what do you think the biggest issues are with all of what they're doing, and what do you want to see changed, and why is it happening?
I'll tell you what I think, just speaking from my own experience, I think leadership has to change. That's why I said what I said earlier. You have a Dr. Jones in there now he took over. He was the interim at the time after Dr. Grimm left. And from what I heard is they went outsourced and tried to find someone, and they went on a kind of a scouting expedition to try to find somebody to bring in to oversee our health system. I didn't hear that we got any good candidates or anybody who wanted to do that. So they put Dr. Jones, who is also a dentist, by the way.
There's a lot of dentists out here running politics.
I know, and so, but I think the difference between him and Dr. Grimm is Dr. Jones doesn't know anything.
Okay.
I'll just be.
Yeah. So what was your experience with all this then? Like, what really pushed you to even want to speak out on this stuff, and what's get into your story on that?
Well, just the fact that I lived in the experience in 8.5 years and got to see how the tribe works and how the infrastructure and everything works with the tribes and who's running what and how the people who are running these systems, how they treat the people and how they where their focus is, and it really isn't on the people. And I'll tell you, here was the icing on the cake. Is I was speaking to one of the nurses this past week. And I know lots of the health nurses and some of the doctors and stuff. And so I was speaking to one of the health nurses, and I don't know if you knew, last week or the week before. I'm trying, my weeks are running together, but it was Nurse Appreciation Week.
Yep.
Okay. Well, one of the nurses, we were chatting, and she said, "You know what they did for us? You know what the health system did for us for Nurses Week?" And I said, "What?" She said, "They got us a little tiny bag of skinny popcorn." And she said they put a little note and said, "We popped in to tell you thank you."
Okay.
That's it.
That's it.
That's what they did for them. You know what they do for the docs?
What?
They throw a huge party every year. One year that I was there, the first year there, I think it was called like "What's Up, Doc," and they would throw it at the Hard Rock Casino.
The one in Tulsa?
Yeah.
So
they throw these big, and then they give all the docs gifts. I know one year they gave them all new white coats with their names embroidered, and then one year they gave them some of these chairs, like these folding lawn chair type things, and then they throw this big party for them every year. And to do that to the nurses.
Oh, the nurses are the ones that make the whole hospital go. They're doing all the work anyways.
The health system would fall apart without nurses.
Yeah, there'd be no. All the doctors would have to do their own work. That's terrible. That's just really bad leadership. Really bad leadership.
Really bad.
And I feel like if you operate, just from like a business perspective is how I relate. That if you treat your people like that, they're all either going to revolt against you, or it's just going to completely collapse.
Yep.
So, that's just got to change. Why? Now, how do these people, in your opinion, get to where they're at? I guess they vote them in, right?
Well, it's
how does
obviously you haven't been around. In the old saying is it's a good old boy system.
Yeah.
So people who really don't have the experience, and of course, again, in my experience and things that I've heard and personally, is that there are highly qualified candidates that get turned down because of the good old boy system. And so just because someone knows someone, and I really think that's why our Steve Jones is there now. I think it was a good old boy system. I don't think I think it was the best they had. Really, because I didn't hear of anybody candidates coming from this this big search that they put out to find an executive leader. Steve Jones was the interim. I think he just kind of by default ended up there. And to me, I don't hear any good things about him.
So are any of these positions like voted in?
No.
So that's all.
I should say no. I think they go through tribal council. But if someone, if it's a good old boy, you're gonna. You
can push it through pretty easy.
Yeah, you push it through really easy.
I feel like that can just turn really dangerous.
It does.
It does. That could just be really dangerous.
Yeah.
What happens if that too much power gets put into Cherokee Nation, or Cherokee Nation collapses? That's what would you want to see there? Who would you put there? Why don't you go do it?
Okay, well, one, I'm not a doctor. So. Two,
but is a dentist really though? Either
that's up for debate.
Yeah.
But yeah, let me give an example of why I think my confusion on why there should be a medical doctor in that position versus a dentist in that position is. When I was over behavioral health, I was I was told that Dr. Jones wanted to run behavioral health like dental.
Okay.
You cannot run behavioral health like dental. You cannot double book. You cannot do all these things. He had no clue about behavioral health, but he wanted to run it like dental. He wanted to run everything like dental. Dental was,
I guess that's all he knew.
that's all he knew. But we were told that he wanted to run that, and I was like, there's just no way. It's impossible. It doesn't. It's apples and oranges. There's just absolutely no way it would work. They still don't. And 8.5 years ago, I tried to implement a lot of these things, and I feel like it just made this big circle after 8.5 years. And where do we end up? Where I wanted to start.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things, when I first started, we were using planners, like books that you write appointment times in, and there was just a stack of them. And the girl who was the administrator at the time, I said, why are we using planners? She said, these are the Bible. This is what we use. I'm like, we need to use something digital, like a calendar or like a Outlook calendar. I mean, we need to make digital calendars or something. And so I pushed, and she pushed back, and ultimately here we are using at the time digital calendars. And I said that we need to start scheduling. I just said all these things, and everybody pushed back, and then ultimately we ended up right back where we're at.
Interesting. Do you think a doctor does it need to be the one in charge, or anybody good at business? Do you feel like maybe somebody outside of a medical field that has a different experience in actually managing large companies would be better suited than somebody just only focused on being a doctor?
I think it's a catch-22. I think if you're a doctor with a business-minded, has some business mind, I think a lot of your CEOs, not a lot of those are doctors. They're just people who understand a business model that can run huge companies. You don't necessarily have to. I
guess the reason I ask that is because to have somebody up top, taking care of doctors and just pissing all over the nurses like that, I mean, I feel like that's a real immature way of thinking, because you really, anybody who's successful and has a good running business will know you have to take care of the people that actually support the business. And if you don't, it's really hard to grow anything. You'll just bottle rocket out and it'll collapse. Yep. And anybody that has the experience in any type of business would kind of know that, I guess. And so I feel like, how could you overlook that? It seems like a very immature, just from a business decision, a very immature leadership thing to do.
Well, you also have to have not just the leadership skills, but I think you have to have a personality type to be able to run a big organization like that too. I don't think he has a person. I honestly, personally, from my experience with Jones, is that he's got very much of a narcissistic personality type, and he can just run over people and not even lose an ounce of sleep. He's a do as I say, not as I do type person. He really is. I mean, he would jump all over someone for being rude or inappropriate to someone, but has no qualms of doing it himself. And ultimately, I've heard people say that.
Yeah.
And then he hires people who are the yes ma'am, no ma'am. He puts those people in position. I'm not a yes ma'am, no ma'am, yes sir, no sir. I am not that type. If you have a brain, your own thoughts, your own ideas, your own direct idea of how, if you just have your own brain, basically, then you don't fit the model.
Yeah.
And I'm just not like that.
Yeah, I'm not either.
Yeah,
I've been fired from every job I've ever had. Not for doing bad work, but I'd always just, kind of wander off like, I can do this myself, and then start a competing business and get fired for that.
Well, and you've got, I think of the nurses too, and really, I think that's what kind of, again, set this discussion in motion for me, is that to hear her say that, and to hear how many nurses I know that are amazing. I mean, there's a lot of great people at Cherokee Nation that work. It is from the top up, or from the upper administration and up, that's creating just this horrible environment for people. You have to walk on eggshells, or you have to worry about your job or being targeted, or you just have to worry about these things. And I'm sure that's with any big corporation, but when you're working in a health field, that shouldn't feel that way. You should be able to come to your job, feel supported, to get the things that you need to do your job. I just don't think that's happening. Nurses, we did a lot of traveling nurses. I bet we paid more for traveling nurses than we would pay. We're paying our full-time nurses.
Oh, they make great money. I get a lot of traveling nurses that come in here are looking for vehicles. And they're
Yep.
making $35, $40, $50 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And the nurses that live and work here full time
Yeah.
come in making about $35,000 a year.
It's crazy.
So I mean, there's no difference in the experience, I guess, is there?
Oh, really? I mean,
So why would they be such high priority, higher pay like that?
well, because I hired a lot of traveling nurses because we couldn't hire people because no one wanted to work in the health system, because it couldn't compete with traveling nurses. So you basically go through a temp or hiring agency that we contract with, and we say, hey, I need this type of nurse, and then they'll go find them. So not only you're paying for that traveling or that hiring agency, you're paying a portion of that money that you pay the nurse goes to the travel or the hiring agency, and then to the nurse, and then it's going to be a little higher because they're having to travel. So you're tacking on these additional costs when you hiring a traveling nurse versus having someone employed. That's why it's easier, because they're there. This is what we pay you, blah blah blah. But then, because everybody needs their cut when you're hiring a traveling nurse.
Yep.
So
Yep. It's its own business, I guess.
yeah. So we had
do you think there's anything that the people here can do to help balance out this weird shift in power that's happening with Cherokee Nation?
Yeah, I think we boy, it's hard to say, but there's a lot of it has a lot to do with our Cherokee Constitution. It starts there, and we are entitled to a convention, and every 20 years we get to review our Constitution. And from my understanding and what I've seen is that our current administration is fighting that or not allowing that to happen.
To not review it?
Yep.
Why would that be?
Well, they don't want to change.
Yeah.
And they've made changes in the Constitution that, from my understanding, and that documentation and the changes and everything has been supplied, and so it's out there of what they go in and change the wording of the Constitution so that they can remain in power, basically.
See, that seems dangerous in itself. You get the wrong people that can control their own constitution. I didn't even know there was a Cherokee Nation constitution.
Oh yeah, it definitely is.
Is it any different than what just the regular constitution is, I guess?
It's kind of the same premise of, your governing body. You have to have this constitution that is your guide in governing this body, this government body. So, and Cherokees had the same type of constitution way back, and and they're during the campaign, the last election campaign, there was David Cornsilk was providing us a lot of information. He said, it's right here in my hand. If you want a copy, I'll give it to you. These are the changes that have been made that affect you as the Cherokee people. And then, of course, the last thing that I heard was that they were trying to make some changes to where one chief can remain in power the whole time.
Well, that's dangerous.
That is dangerous. Yeah, it really reminds me of our own government. Really,
There's a lot. I feel like that's exactly what it's turning into.
Yeah, it really is.
Now, do these how does a change in the Constitution for Cherokee Nation get implemented? Who decides that? Is there a voting on it, or how does that? How's the inner workings of that?
I think
go?
it's that convention, and I don't know the exact format or how it all works, but I know that being able to have this convention and review it, and the people have a voice. I don't think the people have a voice in anything anymore. It has gone away. It's at the hands of a small handful of people who are very powerful, who have can do a lot of things and change a lot of things, and have done so to get us to this point. But I think that is where everything starts, and then it starts to trickle down from there. Then you start getting into your chief and all the people at that level, and then it goes into the health, branches off into the health system and who we hire there and how we it just kind of trickles down from there. But I think we have to start from the very top and restructure. And I don't know what change.
How would that even happen if nobody has the people don't have any control? It's just it sounds like we're on the right way to become China.
Yeah.
Cherokee China's.
Cherokee well, I could see that. And like I said, I know enough to be dangerous, and some of the stuff I'm saying maybe not be 100% accurate, but again, I'm just sharing my experience and things that I've observed. And of course, if I say something wrong, I'll stand to be corrected. But for the most part, this is things that I've seen and heard. And, when I was during the last election, I was kind of big into the election process. And, I did support another candidate. And so.
If I remember right, like your support of the governor, I guess, Stitt, was what started causing your problems in your employment with the Cherokee Nation?
Well, that will never be confirmed, but that's my belief and my experience. That's kind of what started the whole process. I like Stitt. I don't think people understand Stitt the way you get to hear it really. Okay, I'll say this, and I try to be nice. We got a lot of ignorant people out in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Simple-minded people will read or hear something and believe it.
Yeah,
when the first thing they hear.
Yep.
And you don't go and research and look. If someone is providing you something, and I'm kind of the same way. I'm always leery when someone says something, but if you're putting something that's factual in front of my face, like the Constitution, I'm going to be going, well, this makes sense. I get where your reason why you're saying what you're saying. I get where that comes from.
Yep.
But if you're just going to tell me, well, so-and-so said, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting.
It's hard to believe anything anymore.
It really is.
So much nonsense.
Yeah.
I don't. That's why I feel like I'm so clueless. I just kind of stopped following along with everything because I just don't know what to believe. I feel like a lot of people are like that now, especially the younger generation too, are kind of starting to question things a lot more. People like my father, if they hear it and it came from somebody they seem to be reliable, then that's fact. And it's that's dangerous. It's just man, I didn't know Cherokee Nation kind of worked like that. That's wild that there's really no voting of power or any balancing at all within the nation.
Balance is a good word. Checks and balances and
how do they interact with the actual just American government? Like what I guess how does that relationship actually work?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I think just from the experience I can share that I know is with...
Is that who's providing Cherokee Nation with their budget?
They get a federal budget. And so you see Cherokee Nation talks about being sovereign. And I guess if you look up the definition of sovereign, it means self-governing, basically. And so when I think of self-governing, I think of like we have our own city, basically, and we operate the way we want to operate. We don't listen to anybody, or they don't get to tell us what to do. But that federal budget, we have to listen to the
if you take their money, then they own you.
Yeah.
You're their employee.
We get third-party revenue. They come in and audit us, and we have to do what they tell us to do. We get, there are funding sources that we have to abide by their laws and their regulations and to me, that's not sovereign. That's not self-governing. That's
you're within their laws. Then
we're stuck within it. So when I hear the word sovereign, it drives me crazy because
have you heard this sovereign citizen thing that's going around right now? People doing this. Have you heard anything about this? I'll try to not butcher this. So my partner Josh over here is really into it. Okay?
Is he?
And to me, it sounds way too conspiracy for me. And the more research I've done, and it looks like I'm right. But you can basically fill out all these affidavits and stuff and submit them to your courthouse saying that you're a sovereign citizen and not a citizen of the United States, and that it's a way out for being controlled by the government where you don't have to pay taxes and all this stuff. And and like he was really kind of had me going with it, because it's like, man, it kind of makes sense. And I started really researching it and stuff, and then watching the people and videos of people in courtroom just getting slammed and going to jail and just losing their whole life over that. I didn't know if there was actually anything to it, but it sounds like, Cherokee Nation being a sovereign nation is what these people are trying to do on an individual level. And just ruining their lives. And these judges are just, ruthless.
Oh, yeah.
But I guess there's really no way out of anything if you are taking money from the government in any way. If you're using their roads and stuff, you're going to have to abide by their laws, and if Cherokee Nation is a sovereign nation, we have to be, completely self-funded. And I don't think that'll ever happen in America at all. I mean, that'd be stupid to have a nation within a nation, at least from the government's perspective, because they lose complete power. And then it would be like a civil war on this land eventually.
Well, I think that's the fight. Like, the question you asked earlier is how do they interact with other government, like the state, for example. And I think that's the fight right now. And if you there's some stuff out about the toll, paying the toll and the tags and things like that, where the money goes for tags. And so, and they're always saying the governor hates Cherokees, even though he has stated that he is Cherokee, that he hates Cherokees. I don't think he hates Cherokees. I don't believe he hates Cherokees, number one. I know he doesn't.
Yeah, how could anybody really just hate anybody anymore?
But when Cherokee Nation says it, everybody believes it, and then they just feed off of it. But if you don't know the governor, I've met him several times. I've talked to him several times. I think he's an amazing guy. He wants equality for all, but Cherokee Nation wants to own and do what they want to do within their district and territory, even though it's part of the state of Oklahoma. They still say, well, we want to do X, Y, Z because this is our land, and we want to do, they've actually turned it into from Indian territory or land, whatever they used to call it. Now it's a reservation. It's classified. So we kind of backtracked a little bit in our history.
So what's the difference between?
Well, reservation. I mean, you think about. You ever watch Reservoir Dogs and
No, Shana was telling me to watch that.
Not Reservation Dogs.
Reservation Dogs. That was filmed here locally, or pretty local.
Somewhere in, I think, Oklahoma. Somewhere it was.
Yeah.
It was. But you think of, and I've been to actual reservations, and I've been to the Apaches reservation, Apache, and Arizona.
What do you think of them?
It's what you see on TV. You drive in these little.
Pretty rough.
Yeah, it was like a 1,000,000-acre reservation, and you drive through there, and it's just like you went back in time. And when I think of reservation, I think of that. I think of traveling back, because these are houses that are just run down. These are communities, and you drive through this reservation, and there's just separate communities throughout, and they're just poor as all you can get. I mean, they're like the housing is just like it's poor quality. I mean, it's like what you see on TV. I'm telling you. And so I was like, wow, this place really exists. And they said, yeah, this is our reservation. And I'm like, So when I hear that word, I think we just get taken back in time. Kind of like I hear the word indigenous, and I always comment on this on Facebook. So I saw this ad that said grants for the indigenous people, and I said, oh wow, I didn't realize there were natives who still lived in teepees in Oklahoma or something. I can't remember how I worded it, but I was just like, I'm not an indigenous people.
Yep.
I live here in the present. Indigenous, if you read the definition of indigenous, it takes us back again in time. And so I'm like, don't refer to me as indigenous, because I live here in the 2024. I use indoor plumbing. I drive a car. I do all these things. I'm not indigenous. So
not yet. We'll see how the world goes.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're headed that way, maybe.
Yeah, might be better off too. Just get a good hard reset. Start trading cows and chickens again.
Yeah, and I just think people, and I give a benefit of the doubt, people don't understand. And people may see indigenous as a different way, but that's just when I think of that. It just takes me as a native back in time. Listen, I'll tell you this real quick. I don't have a lot invested in Cherokee Nation. I'm an Eastern Band Cherokee.
What does that mean?
That means my ancestors come from North Carolina.
Okay.
So I had some of my ancestors that stayed back in North Carolina during the removal, and then I had some that traveled over here to Oklahoma, Indian Territory, after the removal. So, but my lineage is back in North Carolina, so I'm a member. So they have a band, an Eastern Band of Cherokees is a tribe over there, and that's who I'm part of. That's where I register. So that's where I'm from, and I've been that part of them forever. I used to be part of Cherokee Nation many years ago, until I realized where I actually came from. So then I went back to Eastern Band. I've been part of them. So I don't have anything.
Is there like we have Cherokee Nation hospitals here and stuff? Is it like that in North Carolina also? Is there anything like that there?
Yeah, I mean they all the tribes function off of government funding. All the tribes do. Every tribe.
See, I'm so new to this. Like I've been a registered Indian for as long as I can remember. I'm registered Potawatomi. I'm 1/16 Potawatomi, which I really never thought about it. I just thought I got free healthcare. That's all I've ever used. Is coming to this hospital.
Yeah.
But I never realized how intricate these relationships get with these tribes and the American government. And the more I'm starting to listen and hear these things, it's sounding just as corrupt and twisted. Even more so, it sounds like, because there's no balance of power of what's going on and the inner workings of controlling the Constitution. I can't even imagine if the American government was able to change the Constitution, and then the people didn't have a say in it, there'd be an uproar. That'd just be a viral thing that everybody would just be going crazy about. And I had no idea that was even happening in the place where I'm living at.
Right under your nose.
I had no idea.
Yep.
So, what would be like? So they could just change it to any. I mean, as long as they got away with it. How is there any balance of power at all between who's can change it? I guess and like how that would even be implemented. There's got to be something. Otherwise, this one person can dictate everything.
That I don't know. I think it's someone that would be really awesome, and they would love to do a podcast with you on this.
Yeah.
It would be David Cornsilk.
David Cornsilk, who's that?
He was one of the candidates for the chief. He helped write the Constitution.
Okay.
So he would know way more than I would on the ins and outs of the Constitution.
Yeah, if you could help facilitate that, I would shoot him a message, man, and we could make that happen.
He would do it 100%. I have a good feeling. But he ran for chief on this last election, and he brought during the debates he brought all the information about the Constitution. He highlighted it and bookmarked everything and said, "These are the things that have been changed without the approval of the people." And so and he would point to our current chief, and he'd be like, "And it's your fault," and he would just constantly everything was pointed at him.
That's crazy. That's crazy that power exists, and then that could be forced upon the people. That seems extremely dangerous.
Well, and here's another example of power control is so Sarah Hill used to be the Cherokee Nation's Attorney General, and so she quote unquote stepped down, from what I heard, wanted to kind of go back into her home practice as an attorney, do some other things. It was all a chess move, because then all of a sudden there is a judge's position. I forgot the title. I went blank. Anyway, she had to go before the Judiciary Committee and be appointed as this special judge for a certain area. I forgot where it was at, but it was a play on power. The chief wanted her there because now we have a lot more power and control over certain court things up in that area, and I can't remember where exactly, but that we all saw that coming when she quote unquote resigned. I'm like, you don't resign from a place like that and then all of a sudden want to go back into, and then all of a sudden you're up for election for this position, this judge position, where we're moving people in power that will do what the judge or the chief wants them to do. So we have more control and power over the court system up in this area. I forgot what area it is, up north somewhere. But anyway, that's just another example of just how the system is growing and putting people in power that, I even think, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say, when they voted her in, because these senators have to vote her in, or certain positions have to vote her in. Mark Wayne Mullen voted her in, and I said Mark Wayne Mullen was bought.
I mean, who isn't bought? Is there anybody up there now that's not bought in some way?
I thought at one time when Mark Wayne Mullen was congressman at the time, I thought he was going to do some good things, and then he just turned into, in my opinion, has just turned into one of the puppets. Pay to play.
Yep. Sounds like we need to get you up there, man.
Shoot.
Come on. I'd vote for you if I can vote. I don't know. Don't know anymore.
Well, and and it's really hard because there are people like me that are in these positions. Josh Burkeen, he is an amazing person. If you ever get to know him, our congressman, Josh Burkeen.
I did a podcast with somebody who works for him.
Joshua Hildebrand.
Yeah.
Josh Burkeen, listen, he's legit. But, you got one good guy fighting against an army of bad guys, and ultimately it's going to wear you out, and you're only going to get so far, and then your term is going to be up, and then you got to find someone else. So I think Josh is trying to do some really good things. I think he's getting a lot of pushback from people who don't.
It just sounds like we're on a dangerous road. Why would they not like the governor Stitt so much? Like, who would they rather have in power? Or I guess why are they saying that?
They want a Democrat in power.
Okay.
I mean, it literally it boils down to that. Democrats and people they can buy and persuade.
They can probably get more money.
Yep.
That's wild, man.
They get more power, but they can't bribe or persuade Stitt, and that's why. I mean, it's like Trump. You
Yeah.
know, everybody hates Trump because you can't buy or persuade that man. He'll do what he wants to do. And Stitt is the same way.
Yeah.
And people will say different, but I don't believe it. I just don't think he is a bad person. But when you start feeding that stuff and people start reading it, they're, we live in the world of knee jerk reactors. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So they hear something, they're like, "Oh my God, what a jerk!" I'm like, read some more, learn some more. Um, but gosh, I could just go on forever about this. But again, this is just my own personal experience and my own personal view on.
Well, there's not a lot of people out here, at least that I know, that even have a lot of personal experience, with this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and especially the Cherokee Nation. I mean, I had no idea that it was, work like this.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, there is definitely a lot of puppets there, but I think changing that administration will change our health system. The people there are unhappy now. That administration will say they're not unhappy. Every person I've talked to is unhappy, but they got to be quiet. They could lose their job. They could, and people need a job. And Cherokee Nation, for the most part, pays pretty well. Great benefits. That's things that they use to sink their claws into you.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I didn't need it before. I don't need it now. I'm doing great now.
Yeah, being out on your own.
Yeah, I'm actually making more per hour than I would.
It all comes back to just the American government just being able to have more control over people. It's a terrible thing.
Yeah.
So, do you think that the government, does it affect your business at all now? Kind of being up on a pedestal somewhat where you're knowing and interacting with these people and they obviously know you and your business and stuff. Do you feel any heat like that coming in a direction that affects your business or any pushback at all?
No, I mean, we haven't had any. I try to keep my business out of any politics or anything that, we don't hold like events for politics or anything. I said, we just want to serve coffee and serve the people, and if people don't like me for some odd reason and want to hold a grudge against me for some odd reason, then, I mean, don't come in, I guess. But, ultimately, I just want it to be a service-focused help, providing a product to the community and just leave it at that. I don't want to get into I want to have a place and something that I can do that's separate from what I've been experiencing, the politics and the work and all that stuff. Just, I want something that's separate from all of that. Just, I can go and enjoy, and like I'd mentioned before, I just enjoy, seeing people come in with their computers and laptops. It just gives me joy to see people having a place to go and
yeah. I really feel like this community is kind of coming up too, and there's so much poverty here that's it's kind of hard to see, and I feel like a lot of that could just be from Cherokee Nation just beating down their people.
Mm-hmm.
Like these neighborhoods that are out behind us and like where we're at right now, it's tough. I've noticed that a lot in the Indian Native communities. There's just a lot of poor mindsets in people. If you notice any, like, what do you think about that? Especially being a therapist, I think we talked a little bit about it all. Do you feel like that that genetic, makeup just kind of like they're kind of predispositioned to, suffer from just a lacking mindset?
Yeah. That's a whole nother can of worms there. But yeah, no, I can see. I don't, and I don't know much. I shouldn't say much, but I don't know much about where we are at empowering our people.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see a lot of that. I don't feel like there's a whole lot of that empowerment. And empowerment's going to improve from generation to generation. When you empower people, you get them into a place where they're better than they were before. And when you get to that place where you put someone in a place they're better before, that carries on. Those traits and those behaviors and things carry on. But when you hold somebody in the same place that they are, generation after generation, it's never going to change, and people are going to have the same mindset, and we're still going to see the same revolving door and cycle of people and problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see where that's being how that's being helped in any way.
I've dealt with a few people here from buying vehicles from me that were from different tribes that were just getting crazy unreasonable amounts of money every month. I mean, $20,000 a month for life.
Mm-hmm.
And these people were the most broke people. I mean, 350 credit scores, 400 credit scores.
Wow.
Every single car they've ever bought repossessed. But they would come in here and they keep getting these loans. They'd look at like a $40,000 vehicle and they'd put $20,000 down and just never make a payment ever. And they would get. There's just one guy in here, man. I won't say the tribe that he was with, but he was getting like $50,000 a month.
Well,
And I saw so he was applying for financing for a car, and nobody believed this income. And we showed the bank statements. There were some months where he got like $80,000, and it was gone just as fast as it came in there. We actually had to repossess his vehicle. He came in, they put like $10,000 down on a $20,000 vehicle. Never made the first payment. When they don't make the first payment, there's a recourse on us. We have to pay the bank back what they gave us, and then we have to go get the vehicle, and that's our vehicle again. Once they make the first payment, there's no recourse after that for us. But we had to hunt them down for months and pick them up, and I guess they went as soon as they got paid, they bought that vehicle and did a bunch of drugs, went straight to rehab, and we ended up repossessing it, and they came back like 2 months later and just paid cash for another vehicle.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I've never seen money get like that ever. And I feel like there's not a lot of education or financial education in, that's kind of what I was saying. Like, it's like they're going so extreme. They're either pushing people down and not helping them at all, or just giving them so much money that they're just destroying themselves,
It's smaller tribes, and the Seminoles are well known for getting big checks like that a month. Seminole Nation, because you're a smaller tribe and you get a per capita, and and that's what I don't understand about Cherokee Nation. I mean, if you get this $3.8 billion budget, how come your people don't get a per capita of some sort?
No, that's what I was wondering. How many people are in Cherokee Nation?
I don't remember how many members are enrolled. I guess it depends on who you count. Yeah. Because now they're allowing, it goes down another rabbit hole, but different people, different descendants that are being allowed to be voters and part of the Cherokee Nation for the sake of voting. I think it's, again, like our government, you open the door for illegal aliens to come in and vote. I feel like that's sort of kind of similar context to what some of the people that are allowed to vote in the Cherokee Nation. So they're making some changes on that as well. I think it's all about buying votes for the next election. They're already starting that, and so
how often do they? Well, you said 20 years. When's the next time when the Constitution goes up to be rearranged?
From my understanding, every 20 years you get to review it.
What's the next
now?
Right now?
Yeah,
this year?
Should have been.
Huh.
Should have already been. I'm not sure the exact date, but it's been recent. It should have been, or it should be happening. So, because we're right at the 20 year.
Do they, disclose to the public what is going to be up to be potentially changed, or is that just all kept secret?
That I don't know. I've never been through
I guess it's kept secret then.
I guess so.
Between you and me, I figured you'd know that one.
Yeah. No, that would be a David question, David Cornsfield question, but I'm not sure exactly how all that process works. I've never been through one, but I didn't learn of all of that until I got into the election last year and learned about a lot of new things, and so I'm kind of still learning as I go. Like I said, there's just so much. I mean, we can spend hours talking about just the ins and outs of all these politics and how it works and who controls what, but just my experience in the health system is that's the bulk of my experience and how that government works towards working with the healthcare workers.
What bothers you the most about how it's being ran?
The way they treat people. I mean, I
just that the whole nurse thing, that type of scenario.
Yeah, that set me off. When I heard that, I was like, because I can see the administration, the healthcare administration, I could see how that, mostly Jones. I mean, I feel like he pulls a lot of the strings, how he views people. And if you're not a doctor, you're below him. And nurses, I feel like there's just not, I mean, he may have some nurse friends that he treats okay, but for the bulk of it, I just don't feel like I don't feel like if you're at his level in his mind that I don't know. I just don't feel like you're worth his time. That's the impression that he gives.
Yeah. Well, I guess I mean, are you going to do anything to actually fight this? I know I can tell it bothers you pretty bad, the stuff that's going on. You even want to come on here and talk about it.
I just think of people having a voice. I mean, at this point,
is there anything that people can actually do to like be a part of this Constitution being rewritten or things changed, or anybody, or who would anybody even like reach out to actually have an influence in this?
Yeah, I mean that's the hard part. I mean, because you could reach out to, your own state people, and then they don't really have any influence. I know Cherokee Nation and the state, they sort of work together on some things, but they're not even going to touch any problems that you have. I mean, you can go to whoever I'm sure you can go to the upper level people in government at the Cherokee Nation, but again, they're all in it together. You know what I mean? So what happens over here affects this over here and over here and over here, and if you don't want that to be affected, you're not going to mess with this over here. So it's all tied together. What affects one affects all, and so I think a lot of people are in it together and work together, and people are being bought off, and people are being it's our government.
Yeah.
It's just not any different. It's just that it's a smaller Cherokee or native run government.
So do all nations have their own constitution?
Yeah. Yeah, all the tribes have their own way of running their own tribe and government. Yeah, they all have something different, and they may all be somewhat similar but different in some aspects, but yeah, it's they're all different.
Yeah, I feel like it could be dangerous to have, somebody getting voted in to where they could have really long stints of power.
Yeah,
like you said, I feel like that's like when you said that's starting to sound like real communistic, right there. Because then once that happens, and then what can anybody do?
Nothing. And that's been the complaint, and things that I've heard people is like, the more power we give these people, the more like you said, the more dangerous it becomes, and the harder it becomes to change and control, and it spirals out of control. And that's why they call it, you refer to it as this big machine. It's this big machine that it's hard to.
Well, I entered in this podcast hoping to hear some cool things or things to do, and now I'm just kind of scared. I have no idea. It's man, that's just so strange. I never knew something like this could even happen, and it's not talked about.
The feeling you just described is the feeling that most people get, and that's why they don't talk about it. Most people don't talk about it, but I'm not in a position to lose anything over this discussion. Again, I think it's more about just where I've experienced things, the things, again, that I've heard, and things I'm trying to piece together myself. And not that I have any investment because I'm not a Cherokee Nation member. I'm an Eastern band, so this government doesn't really impact me, whatever they do, because I don't vote. But I'm Cherokee, and I'm a human, and I care for people. And
you still live a part of the community.
I do.
The community supports your business also. So
yeah. It's just me in general, and doing what I've done for 26 years is care for people, and being a mental health therapist for all those years, or working with kids and families and adults and addicts, and name it. I just have a compassion for people, and so when I see people being done wrong, especially nurses who are the most caring, for the most part, are the most caring people.
Do they have the strongest work ethic too?
They do.
To do what they do, to be on their feet for 12 hours a day.
Listen, I've worked around a lot of nurses. I've hired a lot of nurses, and there's some amazing nurses out there. And it just breaks my heart to see that they get treated the way they do, and they just keep putting their head down and moving forward. But they don't. I guess I just want to be that voice for people, and that's my part. I guess, is just being a voice and sharing things that people like yourself don't understand or know.
Yeah, I mean, you started talking about these things, and the only way to do any change, even though we might not legally be able to, I mean, making a group awareness of what's going on, that's where the power is going to come into the change on that to kill that. Because from what it sounds like, there's not very many people that can't be bought, and the ones that can't are so easily pushed down where their voice can just be diminished, and I think just us as a people just need to stand up and one, better ourselves, and just be aware of what's going on. This information should be available for everybody. I had no idea that it was like this, and I don't know anybody that I've ever known in this town that knows what you've told me about, people that they can just change the Constitution and stuff. That's crazy. That's way too much power.
It is.
Way too much power.
And here's another piece where I feel like they hold a lot of power is they Cherokee, and I'm not going to lie, Cherokee Nation pays well. You can become vendors, and I don't know if you know what that means. It basically means that you have a business of some sort and you provide a service. And if you're a vendor, Cherokee, and you're Cherokee owned, and you're a vendor, then whenever they use that service, you have to be the first person that they use as a vendor. They can't go out and do someone who's not a Cherokee Nation vendor. So you have to go through that process.
So it's basically like their own business network, kind of.
Yes. And so if you're a vendor, and this is a lot, and there's a lot of vendors for businesses around here. So this is why people are hush hush. You don't want to upset Cherokee Nation, because then they'll pull your contract or find a way to eliminate your vendor contract with them. And so if that's a good source of income from you, then absolutely you're not going to say anything. You're going to be yes ma'am, no ma'am, yes sir, no sir. Well, I don't function off a vendor. I function off of other things. I don't need their money.
Yeah,
so
it's like they're forcing their community to be in a position where they have to be bought. You know, that's, you know, their livelihoods could just be stripped away. Like you said, they could lose that contract, you know, and then that affects everything. That's just too much power for any government to have. That's just wild, man. You know, that makes me want to really make awareness about that, do some research, because, you know, I have a real large local following here, and no one's ever said this stuff to me. And I talk not a lot about politics in general, but, you know, it comes up a lot, you know, because just doing this show, you know, people want to say, you know, abrasive things or whatever, or controversy, and I've never even heard that mentioned. I didn't even know that was a thing at all. That's just wild. So let's bring some awareness up about this and to just see what we can do, because that's crazy that we should not be treated like that, or people shouldn't be under control like that. And it sounds like it's just people just taking care of themselves at a higher level, and it's getting worse and worse. And if there's nothing done about it, it'll just get out of control, and then you'll just be a slave to wherever you're going to be. And they'll own everything. They'll own your house. They'll own your job. They'll own the people that are employing you. And then what? Then you're just another slave.
Yep.
And that's exactly what we try to get away from, that we even have these Cherokee Nations now. You know, there's history repeating itself. Then where do we go?
Well, and it's weird because it would be your Cherokees being oppressed all over again.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because then you've got people in full control and government power that oppress your people. Kind of like what we went through when we went through the removal, right? I feel like
now it's our own people.
It's our own people doing
giving
it to us.
Yeah,
exactly.
You know, that's just even worse. But, and you know, and it's personal development is, you know, going to be the ultimate rebellion in this. The only way for anybody to get out of the situation is for everybody to kind of stand up and take a voice. And the people that you know, have the knowledge of what's going on and the connections need to start standing up and do it, because if we don't, we'll just lose our entire culture. No, I mean, I'm not really a part of the culture because I don't know much about it at all, but I'm here with these people, and that's exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah,
you'll be completely flushed out of anything that your culture ever was, you know, and then what? Then we're all slaves again, just supporting China.
Yeah. And I don't want to 100% bash the nation. Like I said, I think there are some really good things they do. There's some things programs that I see that are really good. And
well, I mean, I benefit from the healthcare itself because I'm a diabetic.
Yeah.
And just being able to get in and get insulin, actually, which I don't even use anymore at all. It got so frustrating to get insulin through, which is not a stab at Cherokee Nation. It's just the medical system in general. Where I can buy this medicine for $20 at Walmart, but this is life-saving medicine that I know how to administer myself way better than any doctor can tell me.
Yeah.
You know, and I have to take a full day off of work to go see my doctors. They can just tell me absolutely nothing. You just give me a prescription. I was like, I'm just going to pay $20 at the pharmacy, you know, and do it myself.
Yeah.
And plus, my doctor was heavily overweight. I was like, I don't really appreciate anything you have to say to me about my health. Like, you know, I'm fit, I work out, you know, I eat extremely clean, and you're like tipping 300 right now. Like, what are you going to tell me?
Yeah.
You know? But that's a whole different thing. But, you know, I mean, so like who pays, I guess, so like when I go to the doctor and like, does that money just, like, who pays for that? Or how is it is that just part of the government
well, they have
budget, I guess?
Yeah, they have a lot of it comes from the budget, comes from third party, you know, insurance, things like that. So I mean, there's We collect. I think there was not last year, but I think the year before they collected 60 million in third party revenue.
Okay.
So
It really doesn't seem like a lot of money though. Or 60 million for what? Just for medical stuff or just in general?
yeah, for the healthcare system. Yeah, they recouped roughly 60 million for but 30 of that was to pay 30 million of that I heard or was told that it was used to pay part of a loan that the Cherokee Nation business enterprises had. So they paid off a loan or paid on a loan or something. I don't remember, but
I figured the $3 billion was the loan every year.
just there is a lot of misappropriation of funding, and I feel like the whole COVID funding and money was all kind of a sketchy thing. I don't know. I mean, it was just a weird deal, and of all that money, people only got like maybe I don't remember how much exactly, but like $1,000 or something. I don't remember. It was just
yeah. I think I got like $1,000. I think, and like per kid was like 600 or something like that. I think it came out with like 2,200 something like that.
Of all the millions of dollars I'm sure we received for COVID.
Yeah, well, I mean, my head's in the dark on so much stuff like this. My mom's the one that told me about it. She's like, hey, you just got to call this number, and they give you money. And I was like, okay. So I called up, and they asked, like, a few questions, and I clicked some things online, and then they just wrote us a check for $2,200. I didn't know anything else other than that, but...
Well, that's a whole nother discussion about where all that money went, but there's been a lot of speculation, but most people say was misappropriated, mishandled.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, when you got that much money, COVID money, I'm not sure exactly amount. I'm sure it's public knowledge, but I'm not sure the exact amount of how much it was given. But anyway,
well, that's about all the time I got.
Okay,
for today, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming out, Mark. And one thing I can really say about this is, guys, stand up for yourself. Because if you just put your head in the sand and try to go to work and collect money from the government or whatever, you'll end up just being a slave forever. Your kids will too. Just be aware what's going on. Yes. And I would like to. Who'd you say the other gentleman that you said would be on here?
David Cornsilk.
David Cornsilk.
I can reach out to him.
You want to reach out to him? That'd be a great one too.
Yeah,
get both you guys on here. We could talk.
Yeah, he's got a lot of knowledge of the Constitution, I think, and really how the government should be run.
Awesome. Well, guys, catch us next time. This is Diesel Daddy's podcast. Follow, share, and stand up for yourself. See you guys later.